for photobiomodulation, the key is the dosing. The key is how are we delivering these photons to these photoacceptors? It's kind of like pharmaceuticals in that way. With that said, if you don't know how, if you can't measure or you can't model how you're delivering that, then you can't really promise outcomes, because the outcomes are basically a sine wave. It's called the Arndt-Schulz curve or the biphasic dose curve, where as it increases, as you increase the dose level, the outcomes, the beneficial outcomes increase until you hit a peak, and then beyond that point, it goes back down.
Well, folks, I'm pretty stoked about my guests on today's show. We had dinner on a rooftop in Mexico several months ago, almost a year ago, in San Miguel de Allende. Beautiful city. His name's Forrest Smith, and Forrest is a former pretty extreme athlete, rugby player, CrossFitter, and wound up getting into some pretty interesting technology that he studied up on in China and beyond. And I'm just going to leave that there as a big mystery that he and I are going to get a chance to talk about later on, because I love the stuff that he actually brings to the world in the realm of what's called photobiomodulation. Oh yeah, photobiomodulation, a mouthful. Anyways, as you listen in, everything that we talk about, including more information on this KINEON technology that Forrest has brought to the world, you can find at bengreenfieldlife.com/KINEON podcast. And KINEON is spelled KINEON. So bengreenfieldlife.com/KINEON podcast. Forrest, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you again, and super excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Do you remember the name of that restaurant we had dinner at in San Miguel de Allende? It was excellent. One of the best meals
I'll
I had
have to look
there.
it back up, actually, but it was very good. Really good. Yes.
Yeah. How long have you lived in Mexico, by the way?
I've been in Mexico for about 3 years now. And this is going to sound funny, but I typically live in China. I left China. I've been in China for almost 20 years, building innovative hardware and technology companies and manufacturing. Basically because it was the middle of the supply chain, and I speak and read and write fluent Chinese. But when COVID kicked off, it seemed a little bit unsettling. So I took my family. It looked like they were going to lock the country down. And so before they could, I took my family, my two boys and my wife, and started traveling. And when we did, the assumption was that we'd be traveling for a couple of months and then come back to China to our normal life and house and dog. And what happened in reality was the borders were shut, our visas were canceled, the flights were canceled, and we had to find a new place to live almost overnight. And so,
wow.
Having just been in Mexico to visit, we picked out 6 cities in Mexico to try out and ended up settling down here.
Man, that's, I know you have a pretty interesting history of how you got into China in the first place, but how far are you from from San Miguel de Allende, where we met up for dinner?
Between 45 minutes and an hour, depending on traffic.
I was talking with a guy who's actually pretty well known in the health sector. I won't drop his name right now because I don't know if he wants to be busted for this or not, but he believes that there is going to be a pretty big recessionary event in America and honestly beyond. And I asked him, we were walking on the beach, I asked him this question. I said, well, if you could go anywhere in the world to live in the safest place possible with the most amount of freedom possible, if there were some kind of a global or even national recession, where would you go? And he said Mexico. He said it's just like super easy to get a visa or even an alternate citizenship, that it is very, very friendly as far as a place for taxes, for business, etc. But what are your thoughts on that?
I've loved it. I was in China for almost 20 years, and I spent a lot of time kind of traveling around Asia for work. And I did not anticipate that getting to Mexico, I was going to be able to find a good place to set up and do the same level of business that we were doing from China. The world's a lot smaller now, and Mexico is super friendly. We're up. It's been great for my training. I'm up at central Mexico. Many of the cities are above 7,000 feet up. So if you're doing cardiovascular training, I've got my assault bike and my echo bike here in the house that I do kind of aerobic, anaerobic training on. And so if you're training at some level like this, it's really helpful from the elevation up. From a business standpoint, it's been great. The schools are really good. I've got two boys, 8 and 4, and they're loving the schools here. They actually shifted from fluent Chinese to fluent Spanish now, which is it's amazing to see those small changes in day-to-day life. But from a lifestyle and work standpoint, it's been amazing, and I think it's going to get more and more so because it's you're seeing a large shift from China being a huge supply chain center for the world, to people finding that there's a lot of uncertainty around China and Asia right now relative to that, and trying to find a space to be able to supplement their supply chain. And I think Mexico's benefited by that quite a lot. And the currency, even out, the dollar's been very strong, but the currency here is actually outpacing the dollar now. And I think it's reflective of what's happening with the growth with the country.
Wow, interesting. By the way, you mentioned two bikes. The assault bike, which I'm familiar with, was the other one you said the Echo bike?
That's right. That's right. So the assault bike I started on with my CrossFit training. The Echo bike is made by Rogue, who's a big kind of barbells and plates and lifting equipment, racks, etc. manufacturer, and they made their own heavy duty. Um, it's actually a band. So there's a chain like a normal bike chain driving the assault bike. There's a belt driving the Echo bike, and because of that, it's a little bit quieter. It's more difficult from a calorie standpoint. So if you're comparing one to one on the calories, I find that it's a little bit slower to take over those calories, but it's really a well constructed bike.
Interesting. I'll have to look it up. The Echo bike, and that's by Rogue. You said.
That's right.
Okay, got it. Now you originally, speaking of fitness, were big into, was it rugby or CrossFit that you got to do first?
So I got into CrossFit by way of rugby. I was about 37 or 38, and my neighbor was the president and kind of head of the local rugby club in South China in Guangzhou, the city level team. And I'd played American football growing up, and I missed the contact, but I hadn't played a contact sport in 15 or 20 years. But he got me back out there with rugby, and it just ignited something. It's a great sport. The social side of it is amazing, and it really plugs you in with a lot of people who are doing fun and interesting things. And so I, by way of getting back into rugby, I realized I had to get back into better shape. The rugby team was training CrossFit, and so I came to CrossFit, both rugby and CrossFit, in my late 30s.
Oh wow! But leading up to that point, you hadn't been doing a lot besides playing football early on.
That's right. I was actually I had done some type of almost bro science, bro splits type gym lifting, back and biceps one day and kind of legs the next day or something like this, trying to stay in a little bit of shape, but I hadn't really done any metabolic conditioning in some time. And this, uh, you know, that was really kind of more down to the fact that I've always been building startups, and as part of that, time is limited. You're kind of working 7 days a week, and it's a little bit more stressful. And what it's come to find, or come to turn into over time, has been the metabolic training has become a bit of a stress relief, or mitigation strategy for me. And it's been introduced by way of CrossFit, but now with different types of training modalities around this, there's kind of functional bodybuilding and a number of different types of programming that you can find. But for me, the main thing was keeping the metabolic training has become more and more important, to offset kind of age-related injuries and really kind of buy in for the cognitive benefits of this, because I do see a lot of the neurocognitive benefits from this in the literature, but also just from a daily basis, you feel that much better from an affect and mood standpoint.
You mean when you're doing the metabolic training?
That's right.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Like I have a great deal of evolution as far as what I've experienced in my own fitness routine. Like this morning's workout was about 3 15-minute yoga flow sessions in the sauna with a 5-minute cold plunge in between each under the red light. So I
That's awesome.
basically was just doing red light, heat, and cold. And for me, that's actually pretty metabolically stimulating and honestly somewhat demanding workout if you're holding yoga poses and doing kind of like isometrics with an elevated heart rate and then hitting the cold and going back and forth. But of course, a big part of that for me